Well, hello there, and welcome to week 6. This week, we're going to be discussing team and psychodynamic approaches to leadership. I hope you have found it interesting so far, and these are two more topics that you can add to your list of leadership abilities and talents that have to be employed in order to get folks to work with you as a leader. So, team leadership, I think you're very well aware, is the becoming very popular. We all understand that we have to work in collaboratives and work together to deal with very complex situations. And the text does a good job of laying out the components of this, starting out with the concept of functional leadership. How do you get this to work? We know that this is a mediating process which is dependent on both the leader and the followers. In both of the topics we're discussing and looking into this week, kind of harkens back a little bit to personalities, both on the part of the leader and the followers, but nevertheless, there are certain components we can see. The functional roles of the players in this are the leader is to monitor the team and to take action to ensure effectiveness. It has to be it reminds me a lot of group work in a lot of ways. It certainly is something that we learn of how to lead a group without doing the work for the group. The leader is behaviorally flexible and has to have a lot of wide action and skill capabilities, has to be competent and seasoned to do this. The leader has to be able to react to the different levels of people in the group as they bring them along. I started in this field as a basketball coach, and that's what got me interested in learning more about people and leading a group of young men to operate as a team. You have to know a little something about the sport. You have to be decisive, and you've got to deal with a lot of different personalities. Obviously, not too different from many of the team situations I've been in, except for elective office, which I will get to in a minute. Leader decisions are to once again monitor or take action, intervene to meet task and relational needs to facilitate the functioning of the group, and intervene with external supports when needed. Sometimes the groups need a little help. The tasks have to be goal focused, maybe related on training, maybe related on structure. The whole idea is to promote the competency of the group members to form their own team purpose and abilities. Relational, coaching, conflict resolution, pushing for collaboration and commitment, and the external issues of building alliances, negotiating, bringing in environmental info where necessary. In your chapter, the Hill model for team leadership does a good job of describing the various internal leadership actions and external leadership actions that the leader can take to promote effectiveness. This is on page 367, and on page 369 there's a really good list of the criteria of team effectiveness, the conditions for group effectiveness, having a compelling person, the right people, having a team that operates as a team, norms of conduct, and the characteristics of having elevated goals, results, driven, competency, unifies commitment, many of the things we're talking about. So we know this about team, but it is something that is sometimes easier said than done. It's a cognitive approach in some ways. It has to do with selecting the right people, These are the strengths. The negatives are it can be complex. Shared leadership and sharing, playing well with others is easier said than done, as anyone who has worked in teams knows. Psychodynamic approach is not too different in a way because, and I did not spend a lot of time on this because this is certainly something you have studied long and hard. It's essentially knowing yourself and those you are leading. It's being aware of the psychological, the social, and emotional processes that lie behind bringing a team together. The strengths of being psychodynamically oriented is that you can analyze yourself and how you should interact as well as others, the context, systems, what we learn about systems, the group processes that go on, and the criticism is that this is based on a diagnostic kind of, especially related to diagnosing mental illness and dysfunction, and focused on how do you create individual change focus. Now, I mentioned about elective office, so I was on the Riverside City Council from 2003 and 2007, and I have to tell you the two most prevalent skills that I relied on was my knowledge of psychodynamics, having trained as a clinician, and also teams, how to build teams, which had more to do with group work skills than anything else. Being in a team of 7 elected individuals and having to get 4 votes, yes, there are some political tactics you can take, but I also found the approach of trying to build team and alliances and all the tactics that are talked about in this project chapter and in group work skills, along with an understanding of the psychodynamics behind people's motivations and how to work with that, was very useful. Some other thoughts regarding these topics, which I will convey to you, is how do we get to this point? This is my little analysis of the evolution of management thought, where we start off from the beginning of time. Even if you read the Bible and other old documents, you will see there was always someone who led others and brought people together to accomplish things. The scientific management of the Industrial Revolution, where people were like cogs in the machine, to the World War era, where productivity was everything, to post-World War, when people were used to working in platoons and little groups to accomplish things, and group dynamics take place in the workplace, to the behavioral research. Some of you may recall B.F. Skinner and his work in the 60s, dating back to the Pavlovian theories. I was working in a group home at a time where we were using token economy behavioral approaches to motivating young delinquent boys. And then we come into the 70s and the 90s, where when women enter the workforce, we begin to talk about socially correct outputs, and it changes the workforce and the relational aspects. And so we start to talk about corporate cultures, to the current state where because of the internet, because of the ability, you all will probably not work in the same place. You may not even work in a workplace. You may work from home or anywhere in the world. So we talk about more about visionary, being collaborative, which is the team component of this, customer, community-centered, entrepreneurial, and we talk more about leadership than management. These are some things which I have noticed which reinforce concepts in the chapter. You want to build a good leadership team? Number one, select carefully, because in human services, the people are the product, right? You don't make widgets. So unless you select carefully, you've lost it from the get-go. Teaching, training, communicating, the coaching people, creating the culture, imparting the values, place for passion and performance. And I will speak more about this in a later session about entrepreneurial spirit and wizardry, promoting risk-taking, empowerment, building teams, delegating. which is a big part of building a team, is being able to delegate authority and the ability to make decisions, creating confidence, and planning for the future, rewarding that commitment. So at the heart of this, I think, if you want to build good teams and empower people to be leaders in of themselves, you need to start thinking about skills and strategies to problem solve. How are you as a problem solver? Problem solving is the biggest challenge and basically the biggest task that has to be mastered. And this is my list of what people need to do: taking ownership to solve problems, sharing responsibility, being able to work in teams with complex problems, being flexible and adaptable, taking risks, taking a chance to impact, always focused on the customer, the client, being hopeful in that interaction, communicating by following through, and being timely, responsive. Two most important things I learned throughout my career, I learned in social work school. Meet the client where they are at and give them what they need when they need it. Not giving them what you want to give them when you want to give it and what you think is best for them. That's the opposite of being customer and client centered. And as Peter Drucker says, you could learn all about this and you could read all about this, but unless you make yourself effective, it's not going to work. You've got to take ownership. Tom Peters, you could go on YouTube, the Leadership Alliance. It's a little old video, but he talks about all these ways that you promote team in the workplace. This is when the concept came to the fore in the 90s, creating ownership, promoting work teams, and recognizing, rewarding, and establishing vision and values. And finally, as I said before, you got to have some value system that holds this together, that speaks to the psyche of people and also speaks to their reason for being in this organization, to the corporate culture values that hold it together. So these are my list of what I impart to my employees, taking ownership that they are the organization, the service, that the client and customers come first, that the community is who we are accountable and serve. This is where we come from. My organization was formed in 1953 by the Junior League of Riverside. All of these efforts come from a small group of people usually to improve the human services in their community. Communication, being open and truthful, problem solving, having a dynamic vision and participation, and working with dignity and honesty. So these are some of the values. For me, it brings together the psychodynamic and the team building. And as I tell my staff, because I do all the orientations, the initial part for new employees at my organization, and I do it to communicate this value system as the core, the basis of how they will build a team effort in their work at Family Service. Hope this helps in bringing some of the concepts in a practical way to light.